Guadalupe River Project, which spans from Gold Street, El Viso, up to Interstate 880. For those joining us on Zoom, welcome. We're also recording this meeting so that at some point later on, you'd like to view the video, it'll be available on our YouTube channel. And that'll probably be up in the next few days. And again, for those for folks joining us on Zoom, if you have any questions, please enter them into the Q&A box, not the chat box. Sorry, I'm going to advance this here. There we go. The Q&A box will allow us to read off the question, and it'll become part of the record. And also, when you start getting so many questions, the Q&A box helps us keep all the questions organized. So please do so. And at the end, staff will be taking questions. So tonight we'll be providing an update, which includes a description of the conceptual alternatives that are being evaluated. We were very interested in your input on Valley's Water's recommendations to restore the river's capacity to provide a 100-year flood protection level. A housekeeping item: if anyone needs to use the restroom, they're right outside this door. And also, invite everybody to check out our drought conservation items. There's a lot of great items for you to take for your home. I know that we're leaving summer, we're going to winter, but conservation should be a way of life. In addition to that, we also want you to learn about our Valley Water water supply master plan. There's information back there that you can grab and learn more about that plan. So you can learn about the projects that are in consideration and so on. And following the meeting, for those that checked in, you should have gotten a survey card. Those survey cards are very important to us because it helps us plan effective and efficient meetings so that as we continue to have conversations about the project, we're delivering meetings that everyone can enjoy and that are a benefit to the community as we seek input. Now I would like to introduce Director Santos, member of the Valley Water Board of Directors. He represents this area. He was elected to the board in 2000 to represent District 3, which includes the cities of Sunnyvale, Santa Clara, the El Viso community, Milpitas, Berryessa, and Allen Rock communities as well. Director Santos is a native of El Viso, has worked as a fire captain, and volunteered many years, including serving as chairman of the El Viso Library Project fundraising committee. Director Santos, the board's all yours, sir.
Well, thank you, and welcome everybody. I appreciate it. I'm Richard Santos, your director of the Santa Fe Valley Water District, and I was born and raised about 5 miles up here. Down there, for 10 years. I've been through all kinds of floods. I've got a lot of experience. In fact, this morning I was doing a welcoming for winter preparedness for people all over Santa Fe County and different cities that we provide training for in case you have potential emergency or flood or whatever have you. So give me some background. I thought it was give me that lesson. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you.
But back in 1963, as a young soldier in the DMZ in Korea, we had flash flood and monsoon rain and so I have a lot of experience and lost everything over here about 3 times. And my grandfather had a ranch right about a mile up here called the Vega Ranch. That's where I picked pears all the time. And back in those days, they actually flooded the fields for water at different times. And in fact, as a young person, oh, no applause. We didn't get input from the county when we have rivers or whatever we have or flood protection. And today we give you all kinds of input and helping with the design and whatever have you. So it's really good. We've really changed and we're doing a great job. We have a great staff here too. So when you have questions. So before I start, I do want to announce a few people here, especially District 1 Santa Clara Council person, Kathy Wanabe, my good friend. We also have Assembly Member Alex Lees, Joe Nguyen. Hi, welcome. And Martha Krieger from State Senator Aisha Wahan. See here? Might be on up there. Another person. And David Fernandez, is he here? From President Susan Allenberg County. Okay. Anyway. I talked about my background and good stuff. So here we go. This project personally important to me as I will reduce the risk of flooding in Santa Clara and San Jose communities. We focus specifically on improving a stretch of Guadalupe from Gold Street in Alviso down to where the Interstate 880 links up on the Airport Parkway. We're starting this design phase of the project. I want your input for the staff recommendation. We will use your feedback to help develop this final project. We welcome any of the comments from you because we want to make sure it's a better project for everyone. So with that, please work with our staff. We want to have your input. And thank you for coming. And I'm available too. Jose, back to you.
Very much, Representative. Next, I think I need to advance the slide deck here so that we can move us forward into the next stage of tonight's meeting. And so in preparation for that, get over here. Oh, sure. Oh, there we go. Get it all set up. So next, I'd like to invite Katie Muller. She is the associate engineer in the project, and she is the one that will be providing us tonight's presentation. So Katie, please welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, great. So, like they said, my name is Katie Miller. I'm the project manager for the Lower Guadalupe River Project, and I'll be sharing our recommended alternative with you tonight. So first, just to go over our agenda, we would like to provide updates on the Lower Guadalupe River Project and share our alternative with you. So we're going to be doing that by providing a little bit of project background, our planning process, sharing our alternatives evaluation, and our recommended alternative. And at the end, there will be an opportunity for questions and feedback. So here's where we are in our project timeline currently. We're in the planning phase, but we're towards the end. We've had 2 previous meetings for this project in the planning phase, and both presentations are available online on our website if you're interested in viewing those. But we're back today at the end of our planning phase to share our recommended alternative and to hear any questions or concerns that you may have about the project moving forward. So first, we're going to go into a little bit of project history. The Guadalupe River is in the Guadalupe watershed. There are 7 reservoirs in the upper watershed of this watershed. 5 of those are owned and operated by Valley Water. Those are Vasona Reservoir, Lexington Reservoir, Guadalupe Reservoir, Almaden Reservoir, and Calero Reservoir. So the Guadalupe River itself is 15 miles long, and all of the rain that falls in this watershed ends up in the Guadalupe River. But for ease of, because it's so long, we kind of split it up. And so we have Upper Guadalupe River, which is Blossom Hill to Interstate 280. And then we refer to the downtown piece, downtown Guadalupe River, that's between Interstate 280 and Interstate 880. And then what we're going to be talking about tonight is the Lower Guadalupe River, which is Interstate 880 to Alviso Slough, which drains to the bay. So the Lower Guadalupe River is 6 miles long. We had Valley Water completed a flood protection project here in 2004 called the Lower Guadalupe River Project, same name. It provided 100-year protection in this area, and it mainly did that by building levees and flood walls in this light blue area shown here. And then there were 3 major bridge improvements that were constructed in 2004, and those were Skyport Bridge, Highway 101 Bridge, and California State Route 237 Bridge. So the problem now is that we are finding that the river in this area has insufficient capacity. So we discovered this through recent high water marks that we take routinely after large storms. And so we put this into our models and noticed that the water surface elevation we're observing in the field was higher than we were predicting. So we did some updates and found that the design condition is contained within the channel with a little bit of a factor of safety there, and then the current condition is spilling over in certain areas. And there are several reasons why this occurred, but the main reason is that there's much more vegetation in the channel than was previously intended, even with regular vegetation maintenance that we do routinely. And so this is an example of what we have current condition and what the design condition was accounting for. And this is in the most vegetated reach between Montague Expressway and Trimble Road. So I'm just gonna take a break just for briefly to talk about preparations that we're doing in the meantime while this project is going through design and construction. There are certain things that we're doing to account for this and help in the meantime. So Valley Water staff went in and removed some vegetation from the levees and 15 feet into the channel to help with capacity over 2 summers. And then we also did some sediment removal in the channel to help with flow capacity. We also lowered Lexington Reservoir to 70 to 75% of capacity, and this allows for more storage in the reservoir if the area receives a large storm. And then Valley Water also has a robust storm preparedness system, which we use every storm season. We have field information teams, and we closely coordinate with the cities of San Jose and Santa Clara during storm events. And we have emergency action plans in place also. So our objectives for this project moving forward into the planning phase was our main objective was to restore the level of service to the channel. And then we had some secondary objectives, which were to minimize the need for future operations and maintenance activities, and to maintain and enhance public recreation and access, and to obtain community support and participation for this project. And then for design criteria, there were a couple things that we considered. Hydraulics and hydrology is how much flow is in the channel. So we were looking at the 1% flow capacity, or more commonly referred to as 100 year. We wanted from operations and maintenance, we wanted a sustainable operations and maintenance condition moving forward. We also considered for cost and schedule. We were given around 80 million to try to meet and build as soon as possible, since this is a capacity restoration project. And then for vegetation condition, this is something that we spent a lot of time considering before we moved forward, because we really wanted to create a vegetation condition that was sustainable moving forward. So we worked with our operations and maintenance team and our vegetation field operators to make sure that we could keep a level of vegetation in the channel that was sustainable, and we wouldn't need to work super hard to try to remove. For environmental benefit, and also so that we don't have to come back here later with the same issues. So it ends up being a similar level of maintenance that is done now. And so now that we've defined our problem, I'm going to talk a little bit about our planning process. So Valley Water's planning process, we start with problem definition, which is what I just covered, defining what we think the problem is, what the objectives are that we're going to solve for. And then we move into an iterative planning and design cycle where we start with conceptual alternatives, and then we analyze and refine alternatives. We develop a report, and then we seek public feedback. And then we move into feasible alternatives, repeat that cycle, and then move into staff recommended alternative phase, repeat the cycle, and ultimately come up with the final project that we recommend to design. But one important part of this process is public feedback, which is why we're here today. So we appreciate your participation. So we started with conceptual alternatives. Those are high level, and where basically we try to identify anything within the realm of possibility that could solve this problem. And so you'll see here, it's represented in this upside down pyramid as the largest part of our planning phase, where we identify as many things as possible. Ultimately, we identified 19 different alternatives as part of this process that we were looking at. So there's kind of 3 main groups of ways that we try to reduce flood risk. The first one is by reducing high flows through creating a large open space to hold floodwater, or a large bypass or culverts. And both of those ultimately results in less water in the channel. And so some ways that we do this is this example here, the bypass culvert. This is in downtown Guadalupe River. And then we also have this example of a detention basin, which would hold water. And this picture here is from McKelvey Park. It's a bonus that these detention basins can also be used as multi-use facilities. So the second type of way that we can reduce flood risk is by changing the geometry of the channel to carry more flow. So we could either make the channel taller or wider. So some ways that we typically do this is flood walls or levees, raising height, head walls at bridges, or passive barriers, which is kind of another less intrusive and less visible type of flood wall. We also looked at widening, but it did end up being difficult in a heavily urbanized area. And then the last way that we look at reducing flood risk is we can reduce roughness, which is determined by rocks, plants, and trees in the channel. Ultimately, all of that takes up space and slows down water in the channel. So you can make it smoother by removing some of that. And then the water flows faster and the water surface elevation is less. So some ways that we could do that is vegetation removal or concrete paving, making the channel smoother. So ultimately, all of those types of things were identified as alternatives conceptually, but we had to screen them to make sure that we thought that they were actually feasible before we spent a lot more time developing those alternatives. So we put all of those through what we called our level 1 screening process, where we ask questions like, does the alternative meet the project objectives? Is the alternative within the cost range that we were given? Is the alternative technically feasible, meaning can it be constructed with current construction methods? And is right-of-way property available for us if we needed it? And so any alternative that met all of those requirements moved through to our feasible phase, where we put a little bit more time developing and looking at it. So here's an example of all the ones that went through our screening process. Ultimately, there were 8 that were identified as feasible alternatives. So we're in our next phase, feasible alternatives. They've gone through their level 1 screening. So at this point, feasible alternatives, we want them to be more detailed. We want them to be practical. We want them to actually meet the project objectives. So ultimately, we had 8 that we identified during this time. And so here are the ones that we identified to continue looking into. So the first is no project, which we're required to keep in there as kind of a comparison. And then the next ones were flood walls and head walls at bridges. Another was a similar flood walls or closing bridges. We looked at raising levees. We looked at kind of a combo of flood walls and levees. We looked at detention basins. And then we also looked at a couple Lexington flow detention alternatives. So either upsizing the outlet or reoperation. And so I did just want to briefly talk about why we did not choose to look at removing vegetation, because it does seem like a promising solution. But when we were looking more into it, we found that the scale of the amount of vegetation we would need to remove is very high. It's around 2,000 trees. And so ultimately, to do that type of removal is a huge effort and requires a lot of mitigation, which requires a lot of land for us to purchase to plant. And so ultimately, this project ended up potentially being much more expensive than we were able to do in our budget. Also, it's not a really sustainable solution because plants grow really well in the Guadalupe River, and so we'd like to try to go with a more sustainable solution. So once we developed the feasible alternatives a little bit more, we had to ultimately evaluate which one would be the best alternative. And so Valley Water does this through our natural flood protection evaluation process. And so through that process, we evaluate each alternative based on 10 different objectives. I've condensed them down here into 5-ish categories just for ease of communication. So we look at things like, does this feasible alternative still meet the project objectives? There were some that didn't once we looked at it a little bit closer. We looked at is maintenance sustainable? We looked at cost. We also look at ecological benefits of a project. And then we also look at community benefits when we evaluate the alternatives. And so ultimately what emerges at the end of this project is not necessarily the cheapest project, but it is the project that balances cost as well as environmental and social benefits. And so ultimately the alternative that came out the best from that alternatives evaluation was our recommended alternative, which is to raise levees and improve bridges. So ultimately, in this image here, the green and blue lines show the extent of the project levee raising. Darker is lower levels of levee raising and lighter is higher. It ends up being around 1 to 3 feet average. And then the project extents ends up being between Highway 101 and 237, with potential bridge impacts on 4 bridges: Airport Parkway, Highway 101, Trimble Road, and Montague Expressway. And then for the cross section on the bottom, you can see the levees will be raised on the outboard side, which helps us preserve capacity as much as possible, as well as visibility into the channel for anyone walking along the trails on the top. Also, there would be retaining walls on Valley Water's property lines to help contain that levee raise to our property. So these are some representative photos of what we think it would look like ultimately at the end. For the levee, it would be raising on an average 1 to 3 feet in most areas. The trails would be relocated to the top of the new levee surface. And then ultimately there would be head walls at the bridges that needed those modifications. Those would be anywhere from 4 to 7 feet total height, or around 1 to 4 feet increased height. And so additional bridge modifications also at those locations would need to be done to structurally accommodate the higher head walls and the higher hydraulic forces. And so just to reiterate some project benefits, why we're really excited about this project is this alternative ultimately gives us a sustainable flood protection solution that balances environment as well as flood capacity. And also the public access and trails would be maintained. And so from here, staff will be transitioning this project to the design phase. And we expect that design phase to last from 2024 to 2027. And during that time, we also do environmental permitting. And then also construction would also be around 3 years. So ultimately from 2027 to 2030. And we will plan to periodically provide public updates throughout that whole process. And so now I'm ready to take any questions that you might have about the presentation or anything else.
Thank you for that presentation, Kate. So if you have any questions for the audience, please just raise your hand and I'll bring the microphone to you. And also, I don't know, for folks listening to us on Zoom, if you have a question, please either raise your hand and staff will recognize you, or put your question in the Q&A box and we will read it out loud so the staff can address your questions.
Katie, I have a question for you. How will this project affect the current Guadalupe Trail?
So we'd like to keep all of the access the same. So ultimately, we think that trail would just be relocated to the top of the new levee. So if there would be construction impacts during the construction phase, but ultimately the public access would be maintained.
Okay, we have a question back here, this gentleman. If you don't mind, I'll hold on to the mic. Feel free to ask.
Well, it was similar to the question that was just asked. I know the city of San Jose has just paid a lot of money to pave that entire trail during that whole lower Guadalupe section. So will that pavement still remain if we raise that 3 feet? Or will it be going back to a dirt trail again?
That's something we'd have to work out more in the design phase, but I believe our intention would be to keep it the same or better.
Any more questions?
Yeah, we don't have any here. I have got another one. You mentioned bridge work in the staff alternative. Do you foresee major traffic impacts for that bridge work?
That also would be something that would need to get looked at a little bit more in design, since this is a pretty preliminary look at the bridge modifications, but ultimately, usually when there are bridge modifications, there are some traffic impacts. But we do try to minimize them as much as possible.
Council member?
Thank you. So thank you, Katie, for the presentation. Yeah, this is a great trail that a lot of folks use, and I think I was on another call with you recently, and I brought up the issue, and I'm going to bring it up again. And it's just you know, with the raising of the levee, do you think that's there will be a way to protect folks that use the Guadalupe? Like I think I mentioned, like especially during the last big rainstorms, that you know, brings out a lot of people. They want to see the how the river has risen, and I see like people with little ones, you know, going out there using the fire trail, you know, throwing rocks in the water. And I talked to a couple of people and just said, hey, that water is really fast and it's really deep, so you've got to be really careful out there. So you know, maybe in planning, the higher levy, which it sounds great, is there a way to, make sure that, I don't know, there's some kind of protections in place that, when people are attracted, to the river rising, that, we make sure that people, are just, mindful, not getting too close, basically. And then the other question I had was, a lot of maintenance has actually been done on the Guadalupe, over the last couple of years. So is this going to be in addition to what's already been occurring? Because it's been wonderful. And actually, if anybody hasn't seen, there's been a lot of wildlife that's returned to the Guadalupe. As a result, people are seeing beavers out there now, which is incredible. But so is this in addition to the work that's been already done? Thank you.
Yes, so this project would be in addition to that vegetation removal work that was done to clear the levee sites and into the channel a little bit. But does communications have an answer for how we do safety communications or flooding levees? Answer. What might be the question?
Hi, good evening. My name is Lynn Fong. I'm the communications manager, and we do a lot of coordinated efforts with various cities when we talk about safety alerts as well as flooding. So like we've seen that this past winter, we've had a lot of collaboration. And as a matter of fact, this week is California Flood Preparedness Week. We just held a press conference with our partner agencies, South County, of course, and various city officials. And so we anticipate that the flood alerts messaging will go out the same way. We're working step by step in coordination with our partner agencies, and we don't anticipate anything different with regard to this watershed.
Katie, I have some questions that have come in on Zoom. So from Stuart, how about the pedestrian bridge at Riverview?
That would be relocated, or the abutments would be moved further out to adjust for that widening.
Thank you. And then Mark, what is the rough cost estimate of this alternative and how would it be funded?
So that we are estimating around $90 million right now for this project. And ultimately it's funded through our Fund 12, which is our general fund.
You mentioned something about receiving $80 million, maybe earlier position. Would that be part of the construction cost, or was that for other type of work done on the creek?
Yeah, that was the 80 million was the original estimate when it moved into our planning unit. So we were trying to keep it around 80, so 90 is pretty close.
Yes, given the cost of construction going up
Oh yeah.
every day. You have any? Oh, yeah. I'll go to him first, and then I'll come back over here. I'll open my mic, go ahead and ask the question.
Yeah, more about trail closures. First off, you had a goal to maintain recreation access. I think access sort of covers this, but I would really like to see Valley Water acknowledge that these rights of way that you administer in conjunction with cities are more than recreation and more than just access in the way that maybe Valley Water thinks about it. These are kind of major transportation networks for cyclists and pedestrians. As for detours, you're doing about 4 years of work on these sections of the bridge, of the levees, in this proposal. How are you thinking about detours and mitigating access impacts for the whole length? Because when we look at this as a transportation network, it's more like a road or a highway, like a long span, and disrupting even a small portion is kind of a big deal to a lot of people. So like, are you coordinating with transit agencies, the ETA, the cities? How many cities are along this route? 3?
Just San Jose and Santa Clara.
Okay. I'm saying this partially because we recently saw Santa Tomas Creek Trail closure due to work that was in conjunction with Valley Water. And well, we understand that this is important work, it needs to be done, and that sometimes closures are the most cost-effective option, the best option. That could have been done a lot better, especially if they just talked to the city and went into the feedback or asked around for specifically gathered outreach from people who use this as a transportation network. We could have just said, move the closure, 200 feet further, past to a different closure point that already existed. And it would have really mitigated the effects.
Thank you for your feedback on that. I really appreciate it. So we will definitely hand that over to the design team because they're the ones that ultimately come up with the construction phasing schedule and all of that. But I do appreciate that, and I do want to try to minimize impact as much as possible. So if there is anybody on the design team that wants to comment, I think we have some design team members that are on Zoom if they have any comments on that.
I also want to add that you mentioned public meetings as we go into the next phase of design. And so there'll be serious public meetings where there'll be opportunities for the public to give input on the trails. And at that point, the plan gets a lot more specific. So we'll have a lot more information. I think right now it's just conceptual, right? So again, there'll be lots of opportunities, and we typically will work with the city where we're doing work. We're very good about going out on social media. We work with Bicycle Coalition. We work with different organizations to make sure that all information gets out and that all the responsible agencies are involved and giving input. So I think I had a question over here with this gentleman, and I'll come back to you, sir.
Whatever, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right, gotcha. This way?
Yes, you just said that you were working with the Bicycle Coalition, and we're also working with the BPACs, San Jose, San Clara, EPA, to do to evaluate the trail designs. You change anything?
Well, at this point, I think we're still conceptual, correct? Yeah.
Right, yeah, that'll come later, but we'll definitely, we record all this feedback, so we'll definitely pass this on to the design team.
So I was just wondering, I didn't hear you mention the Tasman Bridge. Is that going to be impacted also?
Nope, that one's good.
That was good.
Mhm.
And to the council member's question about keeping people away from the river, down where I'm at the lower part of the Guadalupe between Tasman and 237, there's actually a pony wall there along the side of the river. So it kind of keeps people from going down into it. I have one other question, I'm not remembering right now. But, oh yeah. One of the major drawbacks to the Guadalupe River Trail is that where it comes to any roadway, there's no good crossing points. It's terrible. The road just goes there, there's no traffic lights, there's no way to get across the light rail system and Tasman. It's just very inconvenient. Is there any way when the trail is redone that can be looked at?
We can definitely pass that on for something to be looked at.
Thank you.
Katie, I have another one. Oh, sorry, Katie, I have another one from Mark. How close did we come to a flooding event last winter during the peak of the rainy season? I watched the water level rise closer to the top of the flow space at the Montague Bridge, maybe came within 3 to 5 feet of the top.
So as far as I know, last winter, I don't remember what the return period was or the frequency was of that flows, but it was not one of the ones that we were really concerned about.
And then Katie, can you kind of elaborate on the design phase and the duration and what goes into that?
So we think that for the design phase, we'll be hiring potentially a consultant, which means a hiring process, but ultimately we have phases of design. So we start with preliminary design and then we move into refining it more and more. And so ultimately there's a lot of preliminary layout and survey and design work and calculations that need to go into that. And there's also coordination with other agencies like bridge owners that needs to go into any modifications that we make for that. So there's a lot to do in design in 3 years, and it'll be a great effort to get that completed.
You might also add the regulatory permitting process.
And that also, yeah,
A big chunk.
pretty much the same amount of time. So
Thank you. And then can you also, we've had some great feedback in the audience and, we've talked about that's going to go into the design phase and we're going to bring it more out to the public. Can you give us kind of an idea of what that looks like of when, we might be back out in the public, bringing this alternative into the design phase and with more information?
I think typically we come several times during design, but I don't think we have specific points. So I think it's just when we've reached a significant milestone that we would share with the community.
And actually, I believe the survey card that we give you all, if you put in your email address, or if you signed in and gave us your email address, we will add you to the mailing list. So that whenever there's a public meeting for this project, you'll get an email informing you of the meeting with the details and so forth. Or if you want to contact staff, you have a question, Katie, I'm sure you'll share your contact information. So if you think of something, you know, where staff is available. Any more questions from the audience? It's right here.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if the current 100-year flood exposure in the area is protected by the levee has been modeled at all. And then in terms of longevity of the project after completion, you mentioned, you know, more manageable vegetation control, that sort of thing. Can you just speak to a little bit more what that would look like in practice and what you guys plan to implement to prevent this in the future?
Okay, sorry, just to clarify, you're asking if we've seen where the flooding would go in? Yeah, so we, it's difficult to predict how exactly, like where exactly that would go, but it is something that we've tried to estimate. But I do know that in this area, FEMA has zones online that show where zones are for flooding, but also everything here is very flat. So water kind of gets here. So just how the topography is here. And then as far as vegetation in a sustainable vegetation condition, so ultimately that means that the levee sides are clear and 15 feet into the channel is clear. And then ultimately we're not proposing to do a lot of vegetation removal in the rest of the trail, except invasive removal, which is standard. And basically anything under our standard vegetation. We have a stream maintenance program. And so that would be removing invasive vegetation or doing in-stream vegetation removal to help with. And in-stream would be only just the wetted channel for the low events, not the high events. So just kind of the low flow channel is the vegetation that we remove. And so really the rest of the channel is going to hopefully stay the same because it's pretty vegetated now. And so ultimately it would just be maintaining that to its current level and trying to keep it as natural as possible, and then providing that structural protection through the levees as a way to accommodate both environment and flood capacity.
Thank you. We do have a hand raised on Zoom from staff member Carl Newman. So we're gonna unmute you, Carl, and please.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, hi, this is Carl Newman. I'm the engineering unit manager. I'll be overseeing the design team as we move into design for this project. I just wanted to make a few comments about some of the questions. I think the first one of them was about bike impacts and detours. We don't have that level of detail at this point, but once we get into design, we'll certainly look at ways of providing detours for bikes. So there's the least amount of interruption as possible during construction. And so that's really good feedback, and we appreciate those comments. And then we don't currently have anything on the schedule to come back and revisit with the public about any updates, but we will be planning something in the future, probably within a couple of years after the design really gets underway and we get more details for everybody to kind of hear about the progress. And that's all I have at this point.
Thank you, Carl.
Just to hear the meeting, Carl's team will be leading the design for this project. Gentlemen, the question back here from gentlemen?
One other aspect that I haven't heard brought up about the Guadalupe River that is a major problem and concern, and that could actually lead towards issues with flooding, is the homeless camps. And is there anything that we're going to be doing to help to keep the homeless people in areas other than along the Guadalupe River?
Great question.
All right, great question. Let me get up here. So it is a challenge. I think, let me just do a quick overview. Out of the 800 plus miles of creeks in the Santa Clara County, Valley Water has easements rights that are owned about only 1/3 or less of them, actually 1/4, probably 200 and some miles of those. And we do removal of trash and abatement of unhoused sites. And there is a prioritization of those. And obviously, we can't do all of them. And there is a legal precedent for not doing all of that unless there is housing provided. But we do have locations along the creek and all over the county that we do, based on prioritization, take care of that. So maybe I'll have Ron come up and give a couple of points about like how and what we do, what are those prioritizations for. Thank you, Ron.
Hi, Ron Stein, Watershed Operations and Maintenance. I lead the crew that can clean up essentially. So in regards to your question about what we do out there, as she said, that we basically own and maintain 1/3 of all creeks in Santa Clara County. So in the situations where we do have encampments down there in creek areas that we own and maintain. So Valley Water's encampment management strategy basically is to do enhanced cleanups, and which consists of basically going down, trying to minimize the amount of trash and debris in the creek, and then working with outside agencies, Santa Clara County, City of San Jose, other agencies, because obviously they can provide outreach better than we can as the water company. So, and there's certain cases like this project, for instance, during the construction phase of the project, what we would do is we would go down there, we would address the individuals down there, talk to them about the project upcoming, notify them that they're gonna have to leave the area because of the project. We'll work out with, depending on where it is, whether it's in Santa Clara, San Jose, other cities, different situations. We work with other agencies and let them provide outreach, the necessary outreach for them to get their situation to where they can help them get out of the creek, their belongings and whatnot. Then we go in, our crews go in, clean up the remaining of the items left behind and get that situated. That way it's a safe situation for the unhoused out there as the construction goes on, and there's no danger for those individuals. There is federal case law right now that doesn't allow us to remove individuals from public property, which obviously we're a government agency. Doesn't allow us to remove them without providing a place for them to go. Valley Water is obviously a water agency, so we work with other counties, cities and whatnot to try to outreach to them, let them provide those services, and we do our best to help them in that aspect. But in the meantime, if the individuals are out there, we go out, we minimize the amount of trash and debris they have, try to condense their situation down to a smaller area, and then we go back continually, go back there. Right now we have one crew. Fortunately, we're bringing on a second crew to maintain these areas. And we go, it's about a month out scheduled for the specific camps. We have higher volume camps throughout Santa Clara County. We try to maintain as much as possible. And then if somebody calls in through our Access Valley Water page, says, hey, I have a camp over here I want you guys to look at because this, that, or the other, and we go out and we look at it, we address it. There are situations where we remove camps completely. One of them is projects. Another one is if possible, it's the situations happen out there, whether it's, this camp has started a wildfire, this camp is, they've numerous amount of times the police have been out there and a lot of different situations happen. So what we do is myself or another individual, we go out, we do a risk assessment. Depending on that, where that reaches in that risk assessment, if it's at a threshold where we need to super high, then what we do is we compile all that information, we take that information to our CEO, he makes the determination what we do next, and then potentially could up to abate that individual, which is essentially clear them out for the safety of whether it's neighborhoods, safety of the creek, environment, all what that looks like. So, I mean, essentially that's Valley Waters, what we do in the process out there for watershed needs. Question back here. Also, Ron, you mentioned Access Valley Water, for those listening, Access Valley Water is our customer service system. If you go to valleywater.org, you can submit a case. Anything from, as you mentioned, and then housing encampment to a log in the creek to what's going on in my neighborhood. I see a bunch of your trucks out of here, anything. And that request goes directly to the unit at Valley Water responsible for responding. So it's a really good, efficient system for you to let us know what's going on in the community. So.
First, I want to thank you for the work that you do, because that's a lot of work and it's a big project to take on. I work along with the HCDC of the city of San Jose, so I'm aware of homeless issues. Once you remove the cans, once you clean up the areas and you move the people on, they're going to come back. That's just what they do. A lot of them do not feel safe in tiny homes. They definitely don't feel safe in big environments, and they're going to go back and hide in the woods again. So is there a possibility when we set up this whole new program and you redo everything, can we make areas that we can set up for homeless camps? Is that a possibility?
That's also a great question. Bhavani Airpute, I'm the deputy over our watershed projects, capital projects here. We just had a bill passed through legislature to expand Valley Water's authority, if you will, to engage in programs like that. And it's called the Good Neighbor Program. And it just got kicked off literally in the last month or so. So we'll be looking at implementing that program in the next several months, bringing it forward to our board and our environmental cleanup committee to figure out the programs and actions related to that. As part of that program, like Ron mentioned, it's still a partnership with Santa Clara County, and it's not just a matter of the full locations to be provided, but mental health services, other outreach services that need to go as a whole package, and they call it the wraparound services as they do. So it will be part of that to bring it forward to our board to consider how we want to move forward on that program. So more details on developing a comprehensive program to help advance the Good Neighbor Program is upcoming. So
I got it, right?
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, I wanted to add on to that. I'm really glad that you said that, because I'm on the Cities Association, and we actually were having this discussion, and I believe it was Ash Colera's bill. Is it Ash Colera's bill?
it is, yeah.
Yes, and that he brought forward, and we all thought that it was a wonderful idea, and it's an opportunity because Valley Water, can only provide, X amount of service in the county, but then the cities as well, working together, can complete that package, with the wraparound services that you mentioned, and to be able to provide a solution, because as we found out, I mean, the cost of the cleanup is exponential. It's very, very and there's a better way that our taxpayer dollars could be spent. And if it's finding a way to, find housing, whether it's temporary or permanent, it's definitely a wonderful alternative to the problem, that's being addressed. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor.
Do you have any more questions on Zoom, or any other questions from the audience? Oh, here.
I have a question, another comment. Well, comment question. At what point do you engage with engineering departments of other agencies? For example, City Street, San Jose, Santa Clara, BTA, all engineering departments. In some cases, it might make sense to make efficiencies when you're moving the trail, moving and changing access points. At what point are they maybe doing some of the design in conjunction with you, and maybe some of the funding? At what point is it all Valley Water? And then I'm kind of curious about, is the factor of safety changing, or is there any major change to the conditions compared to today?
Thanks for that question. So ultimately, we started planning phase, meeting with other agencies. So with the bridge owners, we've already met with them several times. First, we kind of come to them with all the conceptual alternatives that we're looking at, and then we came back and discussed our feasible alternatives with them and our recommended alternatives. So there's much more that needs to get done, but that is an important part of our process. Ultimately, getting initial feedback on if they think, how feasible they think it would be for us to do those things, because they own those properties. Pavani looked like she wanted to say something.
Yes, definitely. I think the other part during design phases is it's very common for us through the cities that we go through with our projects is to enter into memorandum of agreements and memorandum of understanding, because the recreation portion is usually a city or a county's responsibility, and they do partner with us in cost sharing. And sometimes if it makes sense, they will take on the project, like you said, design, because it's their expertise, and we just coordinate during construction, or in sometimes they'll provide feedback, they'll give their standards, and we pay us as part of the project, and then we incorporate that into the design and then enter into a cost share agreement with them. So all sorts of possibilities, like Katie said, we just started those conversations with the city on all of these other elements that are not for flood protection or related elements. And there's certainly a lot that goes into that 3.5, 4 year period to get the design completed. Thank you for your feedback.
Great, thank you. Do we have any more questions, either from Zoom or from the audience here? Great. So just a couple final items before we invite the director back up to wrap it up. Please fill out your survey cards. There's an opportunity there for you that if there's a question that you think of, feel free to write it in. Please provide an email address so that we can add you to our email list for this project and keep you informed of what's going on. And again, if there's any other issues or anything that you want to let us know that's going on in the community, you have our Access Valley Water, that's a customer service system, so please use that. I guess the next step for us is to start planning for the next series of public meetings, which, as Carl mentioned, he'll be leading, and we'll get information out to the community. So with that, Director Semper, would you please close out the meeting?
Thanks so much, everyone.
Well, thank you. Excellent presentation, and the questions were really good. And you were asking them, so many things came to my mind. Many of you, of course, are a lot younger than I am, and you weren't born and raised here. Well, I can tell you this is a vast improvement. I've lost my home as a child and been adult 3 times in our history. You've never been to a flood. I've lost everything. You never forget that when you come. And that's why I went and got elected. This works now? That's the one. So you never forget those things. And so, back in 1777, when De Anza went all the way down to Cupertino, Guadalupe, we need to get that back again today, bringing trade and so on back and forth. Recreation, Kathy, Councilmember, one of you, totally right. I'll do everything in my influence to make sure we have pavement on those trails, because that's what people in Los Gatos want to come down to the education center and show their children, have lunch and go out into the environment. We talk about flooding, don't forget, you guys don't know, this channel went all the way to Tremble Road, it was all clear, with salt water. When I was a child, and as an adult, it changed today with all the cities pouring fresh water into the channel. It's all changed. So now you have non-native vegetation, and as we said here in the presentation, very expensive. So staff is giving you some great suggestions, and I hope you'll adopt those. There's going to be some cement here and there to make things stronger because of erosion and so on, and that comes with things. But we try to keep it environmentally friendly. You talk about a rail, I wouldn't want to see a rail, but the staff with that safety and the cost and everything, yes, you don't want to see anybody drown. But people need to take care of their kids and be more, let's go back to what you're supposed to be doing when you walk down a bay. And if it's full, why are you down in the river? Oh, you shouldn't be. But we'll do everything we can to address safety, there's no question. With tidal flooding and sea level rise, remember, it's right down here. It's real. We have a shoreline that's costing $500 million, and we're into about 150. So that benefits everybody. So that's costly. And if that doesn't work, this thing by being deeper or whatever have you, can't go wider, it's gonna take care of that volume of water, which is a safety issue. So we want to do as environmental friendly as we can, but we don't want to ever see flooding again. So it's a beautiful project. I really appreciate your question. A lot of thoughts came to my mind. I'll be working with staff. We'll be getting back to you for some more meetings. When you ask about the homeless, I happen to be the chair of the environmental creek cleanup. And so don't be overwhelmed by this bill 1496 with Mr. Carla. He's a good friend and he did a good job. But all that did was change the district act to say we can take money into social things. And we already made promises on Measure S to take care of all these different issues. So we didn't get any money. So when the governor and all these folks passed this bill, I'm not real happy. I just brought my responsibilities, but you didn't send me any money. That's correct. So I say, hello, send us the money. The federal government and the state has to do a lot more than that when you want to do these things, because it costs us $4.7 million this year just for the in-house. Are we sensitive? You better believe it. If many of you folks don't know, right here in Agnew, Governor Reagan was here, he's the one to close the hospitals down. And all those folks went in the river. As a firefighter captain during that time, I used to get 150 calls a month. It went to 350. It would never stop. So we're very sensitive, but we are taking land, whether it be Valley Water, Santa Clara, San Jose County, and we're supporting the tiny homes. We just got through with the DTA down here to help Coyote. We help support the 200 homes going to be over there. But you got to remember, everybody is sensitive if they don't want it in their neighborhoods. So we have a heck of a challenge going on. We're working very hard to do what we can. We're going to continue working. That's our job. And you're right, sir. We go to 100 yards, we clean it up, they're back the next day. That doesn't prevent us from doing the job. And we worry about safety, but we don't have police powers. So we pay San Jose PD $400,000 extra a year to protect our employees from dog bites, gunshots, needles, you name it. So we go through hell. Then the neighborhoods want us to take care of the enforcement. We're not. We can't. So it's a challenge, but we're never going to give up. And that's our job. That's what we're hired for. That's what we're looking for. So I really appreciate your comments. We're taking them down. We'll have more meetings and study all these issues. And we'll come back to you again. So with that, thank you all. Appreciate it.